The Battle of King's Landing is one of the most epic scenes in Game of Thrones history. When Daenerys Targaryen arrived in Westeros, she was welcomed with open arms by the people of King's Landing, who cheered her name and wanted their new queen to take the Iron Throne. However, when Cersei Lannister took the high ground and refused to bend the knee to Dany, things got very bloody very quickly. Dany unleashed her dragons on the city, and it seemed like she would be victorious. But Cersei had a few tricks up her sleeve that made this battle one of the most shocking in God history. As the battle raged on, Dany found herself taking heavy losses, and ultimately she had to watch as many of her supporters burned to death inside the Red Keep. With her army decimated and no allies left, Dany was forced to flee King's Landing, and she ended up making a surprise return to Essos, where she lived out the remainder of her life. But if Dany had actually won the battle, how would it have changed the course of Game of Thrones? Let's find out. Hello and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to look at what would have happened if Dany had won the Battle of King's Landing. Cersei had no intention of submitting to Dany, even though she knew that the Mother of Dragons had 3 extremely powerful dragons at her disposal. Cersei was so confident that she set up a massive scorpions on top of the Red Keep, which were able to shoot down arrows that were coated in wildfire. Wildfire is basically napalm, and these arrows were launched from such a high vantage point that they caused an insane amount of damage. Cersei also chose to fight back against Dany using the Iron Fleet, which proved to be a huge mistake because the dragons easily roasted all of them alive and sent them flying into the Blackwater Rush below. But Cersei still managed to hold on despite the odds being stacked against her. As the battle went on, Tyrion started to feel guilty about his sister being burned alive. So he snuck out of the Red Keep and met up with Varys so they could come up with a plan to end the conflict peacefully. Unfortunately for them, Cersei wasn't having any of it and decided to launch one last desperate attempt to defeat Dany once and for all. She rode a giant mountain of a boar named Bloodworm right into the heart of Dany's dragon, Drogon, and stabbed him multiple times with a spear until he eventually succumbed to his wounds and crashed to the ground. But if Drogon hadn't been killed and instead helped Dany win the battle, things would have played out quite differently. The moment Drogon was injured, Dany instantly panicked and flew away on him to save her own life. Even though she didn't want to leave the people of King's Landing, she knew that she wasn't strong enough to face off against Cersei without Drogon by her side. So she made the difficult decision to retreat and lick her wounds. This is a big moment for Dany because it shows that she is willing to walk away from a battle that she can't win. This isn't something she would have done in season 1 or 2 when she was much more reckless. But by this point in the story, she's grown a lot as a character and is now more level-headed and strategic. She realizes that there is no point in trying to force a victory if the odds are just too stacked against her. In this alternate timeline, Drogon's wound isn't fatal, and he is able to recover after Dany takes him back to one of the secret dragon lairs in the Red Mountains. It is here that Dany spends several months healing both herself and Drogon before coming up with a plan to finally defeat Cersei. During this time, Dany is tormented by nightmares about the destruction of King's Landing and the death of Missandei and Rhaegal. But instead of feeling guilty over her past mistakes, she channels that energy into coming up with a foolproof plan to take down Cersei. She knows that if she wants to rule the Seven Kingdoms, She'll have to be ruthless and get rid of anyone who threatens her power. And Cersei is at the top of that list. Finally, the day comes when Dany feels that she and Drogon are healed enough to go back to King's Landing and finish what she started. She rallies her remaining forces, which include the Dothraki, Unsullied, the Northmen, Tyrion, Sansa, Jon Royce, and a few other loyal lords and ladies. Together, they march on King's Landing and prepare for one last showdown with Cersei. Dany makes it clear that this time she won't be leaving without the Iron Throne. When Cersei hears that Dany's returning, she panics and tries to flee the city with her twin brother Jaime. But they race stopped in their tracks when Drogon appears in the sky above the Red Keep and gives them an ultimatum. Either Cersei gives up and submits to Dany, or Drogon will roast her alive. Cersei knows that she's trapped and has no other options, so she reluctantly agrees to surrender. Dany flies back down to the ground and confronts Cersei, demanding that she bend the knee. But Cersei refuses until Jaime steps in and tells her that it's over and that she needs to accept defeat. Cersei is torn, but ultimately decides to bend the knee and swear loyalty to Dany. After securing her victory, Dany rides through the streets of King's Landing on Drogon while the citizens cheer her name and beg for mercy. She knows that she could easily burn them all alive, but instead chooses to be merciful and spares the lives of everyone in the city. Tyrion watches in awe as his queen rides through the streets of King's Landing, knowing that she's exactly where she's supposed to be. In this alternate timeline, Dany is now the undisputed ruler of the Seven Kingdoms, and it seems like she'll be able to bring peace and prosperity to the realm. But we all know that that's not how Game of Thrones works. So stay tuned to find out what happens next. As Dany's soldiers took over King's Landing, the citizens were outraged that their beautiful city had been destroyed, and many of them blamed Dany for the devastation. They started throwing rocks and rotten food at the Dothraki and Unsullied, which only made those soldiers more angry. Things started to get out of hand quickly, and it looked like the people of King's Landing might start a riot. But then Tyrion stepped in and calmed everyone down. He told them that he understood their anger, but that now was not the time to be fighting. They needed to work together to rebuild King's Landing and make it even better than before. Tyrion's words were wise beyond his years, and the people of King's Landing listened to him. They realized that they couldn't afford to lose any more lives, and agreed to put their anger aside for the time being. Together, they started the long process of cleaning up the mess that Cersei had left behind. They cleared the streets of debris, fixed the damaged buildings, and took care of the wounded. It was hard work, but the people of King's Landing were determined to make their city great again. But not everyone was happy with the way things were going. A group of Lannister loyalists was plotting to take down Dany and seize the Iron Throne for themselves. They knew that they were outnumbered and outmatched, but they were desperate to avenge Cersei and restore the Lannister name. Meanwhile, Dany was struggling to come to terms with the destruction she had caused. She knew that she had acted rashly and that her actions had resulted in the loss of innocent lives. She was determined to make things right and do everything she could to help the people of King's Landing heal. But as Dany worked to rebuild King's Landing, the Lannister loyalists were plotting to take down her and seize the Iron Throne. They knew that they were outnumbered and outmatched, but they were desperate to avenge Cersei and restore the Lannister name. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and let us know in the comments what you think would have happened if Dany had won the Battle of King's Landing. We hope you've enjoyed this video, and we'll see you next time.